Aimed at overhauling civil service examinations, a new pattern giving more emphasis on assessing general studies and aptitude skills of aspirants has been notified by the government. The civil services mains exams for the first time will also have a separate paper on ethics, integrity and aptitude. Mr. Shashank, to what extent do you think these major changes, especially in the mains paper, introducing a new paper on ethics, integrity and aptitude will go a long way in shaping up civil services?
Well, for a long time it has been considered that civil service exams are not really bringing out the people that one needs for a developing society, for the leadership in the administration, and to advise the political leadership as guide the civil society, be with them. So these are issues on which the government has set up several committees on administrative reforms, on civil service reforms, examination reforms. So the latest one seems to have been the one which instigated these changes. And if you look at other countries also, all of them have something or the other regard to ethics or morality. In many cases, which are religious kind of bent of mind of the government, whether Islamic governments or others, they take into account the morality preached by the religious books. Now, since we are a secular country, we do not go by the religious teachings, which are not given in the schools, which means that a person goes through the school system into the college system without discussing these aspects. I mean, maybe at home he is doing it, maybe within his own social system he is doing it, but from the educational point of view, when he comes up to the civil service exams or any other exams for IIT, IIMs or for military or any others, there is no training given at any stage in a secular country on these aspects. So therefore, money becomes the main motivating force, or promotions become the main motivating force for people to go up and to achieve results. Now, this has not been found to be the only or the most optimum criteria. So therefore, government has thought of various other things. And lately, of course, you have seen that there are all these complaints about corruption charges, about terrorism, about people joining all kinds of fringe groups and undermining social stability. So therefore, one has to think of certain values have to be built in, which cannot be only on the basis of money or promotions.
We are talking about ethics, integrity and aptitude. Ethics is something which is really intangible and very difficult to quantify. If you were to have a scale of 1 to 10, it would be really tough for evaluators to place someone at 8 and the same person, some other evaluator might place at 5 or 6. So don't you think that would be kind of a bit vague and very tough to quantify as such?
In the beginning, it will be difficult because the evaluators themselves may not be that much aware of ethics, integrity. So therefore, one has to see whether there has been a tradition in the Indian system, let's say Panchtantra stories or Hitopdeshas or moral stories. They are there. Then in addition, people do belong to one or the other religious community. Some framework under which if a person takes it more seriously, they can understand what are the values which need to be imbibed in the society. And evaluators, I presume, that they are all educated, they are all very mature people who would know as to what kind of things they are looking for. There is likely to be some difficulty in giving a very specific distinction in marks. So whether it is 70%, 90% or 80%, but maybe broad categories one can have that yes, this person knows something, this person doesn't know anything at all.
Mr. Shashank, you have been with the Indian Foreign Service. You retired as the Foreign Secretary. You've seen a lot in the government, what happens actually. And also over the years, the students' attitude towards the civil services. Often it is referred to as the steel framework of the country. Do you think somewhere down the line, this steel framework is starting to get rusted?
Well, since you give the simile of steel framework, so steel has to rust sometime, unless you put some cobalt, nickel, all kinds of other heavier metals into it. But in the modern era, you don't really need to put heavy metals. What you need to put is more knowledge. And as our former president, Abdul Kalam, was very fond of talking about the enlightenment, about awareness. So he always said that the developed or developing countries are not based on the money that they are earning, but on the basis of the knowledge about the minds which are being ignited or not ignited. Once the minds are ignited, then the country can be considered as developed. So therefore, there are certain values which Indian society and India has always tried to preach. So there was this feeling in the world that India is somehow trying to preach values which are more moralistic, which are supposed to be holier, which we have lost somehow. Now everybody says, okay, 10% commission, 15% commission. How much commission can we give to an Indian bureaucrat or another technical official who is negotiating a high deal of $1 billion or $10 billion? So therefore, it's only a question of the value or price which you can put at the morality of a person, which can then be subverted. So we need to go above that. And therefore, this is just a starting point. I'm quite sure it will take us some time. And you just simply based on an examination, you will not be able to achieve it. But it has to be brought into the system of promotions, about getting the highest levels. In fact, sometime I was told that you look for the qualities of not of a civil servant, but of a domestic servant, a secretary to the government of India, because you want them to be totally loyal. So loyalty becomes then much more important than other values. So therefore, there has to be a premium on loyalty, no doubt. Loyalty to nation, loyalty to society, to stability, peace, etc. But not necessarily to everybody putting their hands in the till and collecting money. So therefore, one has to move away from a consumerist culture, from a materialistic culture, to a holistic and to a moralistic culture. So this is a process, and we are part of this. I'm glad that this process has now been started. In the foreign service, we have seen a lot, because there everything is intangible. You cannot quantify foreign policy aims and objectives that clearly, because one cannot say there are a lot of grays areas. And therefore, one has to try to move into those areas
with different
and then
countries.
achieve.
And with different countries, you can have a different attitude.
So you have
and
to achieve maximum, optimum results based on reciprocal interests, based on the values which you observe. For example, in East Asia, there are many countries which say, okay, we learned Buddhist values from India. Now, if you are talking of materialistic value, then they say, okay, then you are like any other materialistic Western country. So why should we befriend you? We might as well go and befriend United States.
Mr. Shashank, you've seen over the years how things have changed in India, especially after post-liberalization 1991. MNCs have come into our Indian economy in a big way. Say if we were to compare the situation 40 years back and now. 40 years back, probably if you were to ask a school-going child that what do you want to become, probably he would say engineer or a doctor or an IAS officer. And probably at that point in time, the first preference would have been for a civil servant. Do you think now in the 21st century that whole gamut of issues has completely changed now and preferences of students and college goers has totally changed?
In one way it has changed, because earlier the governments were supposed to achieve everything. So one was thinking becoming a government doctor, a government engineer, a government civil servant, and whether it was with a motive of serving people or whether it was with a motive of improving one's own lifestyle. Now what has happened is that in the globalization era, what we were expecting from the governments has now become the domain of the private corporations, whether it's multinational corporations, Indian national corporations, but does not mean necessarily that ethics come in. Business corporations can become as bureaucratic or even more bureaucratic than the governments, because at least government has some public good, some constitutional objectives, fundamental
social obligations are there.
Corporation does not have those obligations. Now we are trying to force some corporate social responsibility on them, but otherwise it is just a question of earning money.
You're referring to that new provision in the Companies Act of 2% provision for CSR activity.
Now you have to do for CSR activity, then maybe for nature promotion. Some people are saying, well, we are promoting tree cultivation, etc. But I think what is needed in 21st century, that whether it is the government or it is the corporate, they need to move away towards ethics. So I think that this start which has been made by the government should be taken over by the corporate groups also in their own recruitments and in their own promotion and assignment policies.
Right. Mr. Shashank, this new paper on ethics, integrity and aptitude will probably also include questions to test the candidate's attitude and approach towards issues like probity in public life and also problem-solving approach. And we all do acknowledge the fact that there are conflicting situations in dealing with the society. If you were to take a decision, probably it will benefit a group of people and it won't to another group of people. Do you think UPSC, by having a paper like this, kind of tries to zero in on the right candidate in a better way?
It is only trying. It will take a long time, and unless we have some good internet programs or books available where we are trying to teach certain values, then we know what those values are. Because sometimes if they go to an exclusivist idea, even though the best idea, but suppose it is saying that, okay, anybody who agrees with me is 100% right, everybody else is wrong. So that can also lead to more conflict in the society. So what we have to see is that what is the kind of objective which you have in mind. Like Gandhi used to say that, look, every civil servant, everybody in power of authority, he should seek of how he can wipe the tear out of the eyes of the poorest men, the Gangadin. So do we have something like this? Or Abu bin Adam's poetry that do good to the people, your fellow human beings, then you are doing good to God also. So something like that. So these are the values which perhaps one can expect from the civil servants or from any other person in the corporate authority. But I think what is necessary is to develop the books, etc. at all levels. It's not that only the civil servants have to be good, but everybody else in the society can be as rapacious as possible.
Let me also play the devil's advocate. Critics often point out that our civil service and the entire system is based on the British system which we had. It is our legacy. It was passed down to us. But there is a need to change it now. Probably at that particular point in time when we were a colony of the Britishers, they needed someone from the Indian side to explain to the Gora Babu that what was the case was actually about. So things were put up on a note sheet to the highest authority, and you have designations like secretary, joint secretary, under secretary. Aren't all these designations archaic, and also the attitude towards working?
I agree with you totally that there is requirement for a sea change in the system of governance at all levels. Only thing is that when we became independent, we needed some system because you just cannot do away with all the system. And most of our systems came up in the wake of 1857 revolt. Thereafter, the Britishers needed some police action, they needed some judiciary to be set up, they needed some civil service system to be developed, and actually the most important people were not the big babus, they were the smaller babus who were supposed to be honest and put up the cases. And then through the big babus from the civil, whatever you are saying, steel frame, they would go up to the white man, and the white man will take the final decision in the interest of the colonial ruler. So we need to change everything.
So now you feel that there is a perceptible need to change that. Rather than having administrators, probably you should move towards management and the designation.
That approach has been tried, but then the issue comes up who should be on the tap, who should be on the top. But I think what we need to do is this. The first principle of any management is there should be mutual trust. So one should trust the qualities of the other person, which can come about if there is such a feeling that yes, everybody has some minimum ethics and some minimum qualifications of analyzing goods and preparing position papers. So then it's fine. But so long as we have tough battles between civil and military, between military and police, between politician and the civil servant, or civil society and the governance. So I think there are bound to be problems. And judiciary, again, we have less than 50% of the posts which are filled up. And they are supposed to come up from an area which is itself is a little bit faulty because they are not trained in any ethics. They are supposed to only make money and be successful as lawyers. If they are very successful as lawyers, then they can go up and join the bench.
And with these new changes, let's hope that the civil services goes a long way and brings about meaningful change.
Well, we hope so.
Thank you so much for joining us.